generally there's this idea where you take a very unscrupulous pay for lead company and they will say, hey, we're getting you leads for $17. This is great. And there's a whole bunch of them, but that doesn't tell the whole story. As we know, in my company, we have to ask two other questions. What is that? How many of those turn into estimates and how many of those turn into completed jobs?
All right, so welcome to the Base Coat Brainiac podcast. My name is Austin Hauser. I am Chief Brainiac over here at Base Coat Marketing. Today, I am joined with Nick Slavik, who's actually going to be taking over this podcast today. I've had the pleasure of working with Nick and his team, and we've come up with a lot of really good questions around marketing, painting contractors, and the interaction between the two. So, Nick, take it away, brother.
Hey, man. Nick Slavik. I own the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company, painting business here in Minnesota. I am the board chair of the PCA, the Painting Contractors Association. I'm also the host of Ask a Painter Live. And against Austin's better judgment, he has asked me to do a show takeover. So I had originally planned to only talk about the molecular science of oil primer. I suppose we can talk about marketing and all that other stuff. So no, one of the things that we talk about often and then that we like discovering, because it's kind of new for our industry, is the relationship between vendors, specifically marketers, and painting contractors. And like any relationship, it's got to be a two-way street. And I want to talk about that sort of stuff today because I truly believe, and we've talked about the data and the feelings of this, I think the economy has precipitously shifted from getting labor used to be really hard to find, and now leads are getting harder to find. So whereas recruiting and training and all these ways of apprenticeship and things used to be the thing that was kind of the biggest friction point in running a business, that's becoming much easier. Labor is easier to find. Leads and marketing are now becoming the biggest friction point in people's businesses. So I want to stay ahead of it, especially with somebody like you who's got the data and the feelings. So yeah, where do you want to start with this conversation this morning, Austin?
Man, I think the relationship aspect of marketing is really important. I like to tell anybody that we work with that we don't work for you. We work with you. And I think that's a very important distinction because in this industry, it's all about providing a service to a homeowner or a business owner, right? You're going out there, painting some walls, putting a coating on a surface, whatever that is. And that is very much a service that you're offering. Marketing, I mean, let's just define what marketing is, right? Nick, how would you define marketing in your business?
I think I typically take a very utilitarian approach is the definition of exposing your services to humans so that you can exchange the value that you provide for their value, the money.
Yeah. And I would even go as far as to say that might be considered advertising, right? We're communicating a service that you do to add value to another. Marketing, if you look at it from the standpoint of if you're going to hire somebody to do marketing for you, right? We're simply an amplification device. We need to amplify your message, your business, your services, your value to your audience. So we're a middleman, right? We are playing that game of phone. And in order to play that game of phone correctly and accurately, we need to get to not only get to know who we're talking on behalf of, right? That's a little different than if you were to tell me, hey, I offer painting services in this service area to this type of an audience. We need to go out there and be able to talk on your behalf. So we need to know about you. We need to be able to have the media to supply, all that kind of fun stuff. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. And marketing is something interesting to me because there's, I'm sure you've experienced this with other painting contractors, which is sometimes we can get very brutal and very utilitarian because we live in a world where there's a start line, there's an end line. I want you to paint my bathroom, and we can all agree when it's not painted. We can also agree when it is painted, and there's a tangible benefit in a set amount of time for an exchange of a certain amount of value at the end of it. So marketing gets into this other weird thing where it gets a little squishy. And years and years ago, when I was in college, marketing professors would literally tell you 90% of your marketing is wasted. You just don't know which 90%. And that is absolutely not true anymore. We can track to the nth degree where this stuff comes from. So it's becoming less squishy and less esoteric, but there still is not such a clean start and end point and an exchange of value. And I think that's where people have a lot of friction point. There's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of unknown time horizons with a lot of things too.
Yeah. And to your point, there's so many variables that go into that. I love the question of like, how soon can we expect results, or what type of results can we expect? And there's answers to that, right? There's KPIs that we aim for, and marketing in general should be very predictable, especially if you work in one industry like we do. We can generally predict and forecast results to a certain degree of accuracy. But what I like to say, man, is like you don't compare numbers because you're starting at a different starting point. There's different levels of competition. There's different audience sizes, different demographics that you're targeting. So there's a lot of variables that go into that. So when we look at results and measurement, we can measure things. The one variable that we don't know is how long it's going to take. The end result is always there, right? It's just some people take a little longer to get there than others. Others were able to ramp up real quick. And there's leading indicators that allow us to generally forecast what that looks like. But to your point, measuring things today should be very accurate. And the KPIs that you're tracking, more importantly, those need to be defined as to what is actually going to be benefiting your business and not just the vanity metrics that are out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because we can, I do want to talk about the relationship, but while we're on KPIs, let's talk about that because there is, there's a big argument or an undeveloped discussion that I see happening all over the place. And let's just be honest, the painting industry is largely fragmented, very small businesses, generally unprofessionalized, not a value judgment saying smart or dumb or good or bad, but the sophistication is fairly low with most of this. Most of these painting contractors don't job cost, let alone track their marketing, right? All their lead source and their cost per lead and things. So generally there's this idea where you take a very unscrupulous pay for lead company and they will say, hey, we're getting you leads for $17. This is great. And there's a whole bunch of them, but that doesn't tell the whole story. As we know, in my company, we have to ask two other questions. What is that? How many of those turn into estimates and how many of those turn into completed jobs? And after that, number one, people don't know their cost per lead very well. They've never tracked it. They certainly aren't going to start tracking cost per estimate and cost per completed job. So people like you and other marketers are kind of have to they're going to have to look out for these painting contractors a little bit because in my company, if a value prop of a marketer comes and says, I can get you 1,000 leads for $17 a piece. And I'll say, why don't we do a test and see how many of those turn into estimates? Because otherwise we're just wasting our time. I don't need all those extra leads if they don't turn into anything. And within those leads, what is the average job size? What's the success ratio? When we complete those jobs, what's the finished gross profit? So there's all sorts of these metrics that branch out at the end of it. Sorry, that was long-winded, but the KPIs are very important. And typically people scratch the surface and the story is told by the back end though,
Totally. So look, this is where I really have a passion about the KPIs that we track and the KPIs that don't matter. In the world of marketing, we have a core value. It's called be the 20%. So we only focus on the 20% of things that are going to generate 80% of your results, right? You can pay a marketer to stay busy. They can go out there and do some organic social posting for you and do some light email marketing, right? These are all things that can technically generate results, but they're going to be investing 80% of their time to generate 20% of the things that actually move that needle. Doesn't make sense, right? Most agencies are also typically going to report numbers to you like impressions and clicks and website visits. And those are all great. They're leading indicators and we do track those, but they're not important to you because I like to say you cannot deposit a like in the bank account, right? So there's 4 primary KPIs that you always need to know. It's going to be your set rate, book rate. There's a few different terms for it, but it's all the same thing, right? It's estimates divided by leads. There's going to be your close rate. This is the number that I think most people are pretty good about tracking. You go out on 10 estimates, you close 5 jobs, you got a 50% close rate, right? And then your average job size. So average job size is a critical factor that I think a lot of guys just overlook. And then the cost of marketing is the 4th one. And your cost of marketing, there's a KPI and benchmarks around that. And a lot of guys, I think, look at ROI as a good indication of marketing success, but I don't like that metric because if I told you you have a 2000% ROI, like that doesn't mean anything to you. But if I told you, hey, we have a 5% cost of marketing and we want to keep you under 10%, we know you need to be somewhere between 0 and 10%, right? So it's a lot easier to measure and ultimately gauge the accuracy of that. Based on that data, Nick, would you agree that those are the metrics? Am I missing anything that you guys like to track?
No, I mean, those are the big ones. And on my operations manager dashboard within my marketing thing, like those are the first ones that you look at. Those are kind of like the big indicators, the big pulses, right? And then after that, then you have the ancillary ones that branch off of like within the forms of marketing, what is the average job size? You start getting a little more granular because you start finding weird things where Instagram ends up being a 2500 AJS, flyers ends up being a 6400 AJS. So even though like your set rates and things like that are good between there, you can find out that there might be one sneaky form of marketing that has a $20,000 average job size. And you're like, wait a second, then a lead through there is worth way more, even if it costs more, right? As a percentage. And I
Yes.
will back up your ROI stuff. So for business guys, especially undeveloped business people, love to sit there and say, I got a 20x ROI on my stuff. Well, you have to do some critical thinking about this, because if you spent $25,000 to get $100,000 worth of painting, that's a 4x ROI. I 4x'd my money, right? If you go to the casino, you're not going to 4x your money. If you put it in the stock market, you're not gonna. So it feels great. What you're actually saying though is I have a 25% cost of marketing,
Yeah, right.
which is a hell of a lot bigger than I mean, even marketers won't suggest you do 25% of your revenue as marketing. So within that, it's a feelings-based statement, but the data says you're actually shotgunning your company with a 25% marketing. I mean, materials in a company, paint is only 15% at the most, right? So yeah, I'll back that up.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned something really important here is when you start getting granular. This is also where I see some challenges.
I
There's
know.
data that means something, and there's data that needs some interpretation. And what I mean by that is, if I were to tell you that, hey, your cost per lead on Google is over $200, but your normalized cost per lead across multiple channels is $50, the network effect, the brand awareness effect that marketing can have across certain channels is huge.
Yep.
And what we've seen before is when we get into the weeds, right? When we look at one ad channel, we're like, you know what? That is too high. Our client's concerned about that. We've pulled it out in the past. And what happens is all of the other metrics skyrocket where we don't want them to, because we have retargeting and brand awareness where they might see you on social media and then go Google you on Google and then click on your website. So it is that network effect that requires a little more interpretation and a little more thought. And that's the unfortunate part about marketing is sometimes it's not super black and white.
No, and I will back this up 100% because we have built a marketing strategy in my company based on it's about 60 to 70% of crap that you can immediately track, right? You do something, there's an effect, good. It's tangible. It's a put, it's a take, it's an exchange. But then there is that network effect. There is that whole branding and touches and things out there where after a while, when you have that solid base of things where you pull a lever and something can happen, then you start making a soup out there where if you're, a marketing strategy would be, we're going to our 5 best towns and we're going to do mailers and we're going to do meta and we're going to do door hangers and we're going to do all the email marketing and all this. There is a network effect when all those things are coincided and coordinated together, all of them perform better. The problem is you would need a lifetime of things to say, well, if I drop email 2% and up meta 3% and do this, what's the effect? There's so many variables. In the end, 60 to 70% are things that you can tangibly prove. And as a marketing manager, you can say, this is what I delivered. The 20 to 30%, maybe even 40% is stuff where I can't really prove what percentage of things affect stuff, but I know if I take it all away, it's worse. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those like, and I'm not sophisticated enough in my company to track those exact things. And if I'm being honest, you take a company like Target, I don't know that they can even sometimes know exactly to the nth degree, the 10th of a percent, what their marketing efforts do. But I guarantee you they can prove about 70%, right?
Yeah, I like to say about 80% accuracy is about as good as you're going to get. It's no different than EOS. You aim for about 80%. That's considered good.
Yeah.
And it is very important. When we're on the topic of KPIs, I actually want to share my screen here because this is a calculator that we've developed that really shows the power of some of these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at investment, I like to say marketing is a business investment. You are investing in the future, right? I like to say just on average, you're going to budget somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And there's a few different ways to break that up depending on how you're looking at it. But in the world of marketing, it is about volume. And if you don't have enough volume, you don't have enough opportunities to generate enough return to generate that return on investment that makes this math all make sense, right? So there is kind of a minimum benchmark when you are looking at marketing, specifically online, that if you go below a certain threshold, you're just simply not going to see the returns. And that's why we see a lot of guys say, hey, I've tried that in the past, it doesn't work. It's like, okay, well,
this is Austin. This is that conversation. I sent out 1,000 flyers and nothing happened. Screw flyers, right?
1,000, yeah. You need 10,000 multiple times a year.
A thousand's a big number unless it's flyers. Then
Right.
it's a zero.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are minimums that you need to keep in mind before you dabble. I like to say marketing is very much, you need to measure, but you need to be all in. There needs to be trust and participation in order for that to work. So trialing marketing is important, but you need to give it time and you need to make sure you're investing enough. So let's talk through what that looks like, because there are some hard KPIs around this. So for those of you listening in, I'm going to talk through this. Those of you watching, you can grab the screenshot here, or else you can also go to basecoatmarketing.com/calculator and swipe and deploy this exact calculator on your side. So what we have here is there certain things that are marketing investments and marketing KPIs and sales KPIs, right? There's a marketing to sales handoff that needs to occur, which is part of that relationship that we need to talk about. I like to say on average, our clients are spending about $5,000 a month, and there's a lot of nuances to that. But our average cost per lead, and this is going to be a very general number, is about $60 a lead. That's going to be normalized. It's going to be an average throughout the year. We have some clients well below $30, $20 a lead. Other clients that are in more competitive markets, right? December, January are always going to be the spikes throughout the year. So just take that number holistically. Average set rate in this industry, for those who are marketing, Nick, what is your set rate today?
Yeah, we have two. It waffles between 50% and 85%, normalizing at probably 75, 78, give or take.
Yeah. Okay. So let's plop in 75%. The industry average is 70%. And if your set rate is higher than that, that means that you are likely relying on word of mouth, repeat business, and referrals, right? So when we start adding in people who've never heard of you before, cold, top of funnel marketing, that's where that set rate starts to drop. And that's normal. That's good. We want to see that. It means you're stressing out your sales process, right? Now, your close rate, Nick, you go out on an estimate, 10 estimates. How many jobs do you walk away from there?
43%.
43%. And what's your average job size?
5130.
5130. Yeah. So Nick is right in line with industry averages. He's a little high on some of these, which is good. So it means he's got a great sales process and he's got a good follow-up process. Average job size for this industry is $5,000. Now, here's the cool thing. When we look at your cost of marketing, Nick, you should be at around 7.25% based on this investment of about $5,000 a month, right? So out of every $5,000 you invest, you should be squeezing about $70,000 out of that. Now, when I look at the biggest levers that we have to pull here, here we go. Let's say that we want to simply invest more, right? Because that's a metric that there's no reason to stop investing. So let's say we bump up your ad spend from $2,500 a month to $5,000 a month. That drops your cost of marketing by 2 percentage points, right? Let's say that we are able to work with you and your sales team to dial in the average job size. Let's get that up to maybe closer to 6,000. That drops out a whole other percentage point. So these are the levers, the big levers and buttons that we can push and pull that ultimately dictate how well your marketing performs on the other side of that.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
How do you feel about these KPIs, Nick, based on your experience here?
Yeah. So the one thing I will offer, as it's purely anecdotal, but it is data driven from my company, is that there typically is a 1-to-1 reciprocity between marketing spend and leads up until a point. And that point then becomes a point of diminishing returns. And I've seen that with almost every form of my marketing where, again, I have this great lever. $2,500 will get you 43 leads. You pull it again and it may not create that second 43 leads. Like there's that whole thing we talked about, that intangible, where your marketing feels like it's on this sliding curve where the first stuff you do does the biggest return. And then it has this long tail on it, and it depends how long you do it and how much you do it. That tail, if you do it for years and years and years consistently, you can actually, that tail becomes, the curve isn't as sharp. It's a little more shallow and it even goes out longer. So one strategy that I've taken in my company is trying to figure out where that one extra dollar won't get you another lead. And that takes that level of sophistication of trying to figure out where is it, because I think if a paint business owner came to you and said, that's great, $5,000 will get you 43 leads. How about this? I want 500 leads a month. And I don't think it's as simple as just that math problem of, that. And that would be tough, because that's, if you want that many leads, it does have to be built up over time. But initially, when you do that low hanging fruit, there will be some there, right?
Yeah. So diminishing returns is a real thing. What we typically see, there's two issues that we run into with diminishing returns. The first is very simple. It's audience size. If you're in a market that is under 1 million, so I like to use just population. If you go Google population in your service area, I don't care about homeowners in terms of like how many homes there are in your market. There's typically 2 homeowners per home, 2 decision makers. You can target both of them, right? So I do care about just holistic population size. If you go look at your population size in your market and you're under 1 million, you're going to start to run into diminishing returns once you reach somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a month in ad spend. That's going to vary by channel. If you're over 1 million, that benchmark can be up as close or up as high as around $20,000 a month in spend. And again, that's going to be per channel. So we can take Google, silo that, and we can take Meta and silo that. If we get up to a market like Manhattan, LA, DFW, we can invest up to $20,000 per service because they have the population to support it.
Yep.
The second thing that we run into is time. We increase ad spend and the algorithm's like, oh, more money to play with. Let's throw it out there. And what happens is everything costs more initially. That is to be expected. That's why you should never double ad spend. Anytime a client comes to us and says, hey, I'm seeing great results, let's double it. No, you need to incrementally increase it over time.
Yeah.
If you give the algorithm more money, they're going to spend it.
Your spreadsheet showed something really interesting to me, which is there's a sales portion of this, and that speaks of a relationship, right? And one thing that I was just in Chicago for some master's classes, and a marketing was one where I open up my company, I crack it open, and I show people what we do. And what I always make sure I say is that there is, in business as owners, we need to solve 3 main things. We need to solve leads, we need to solve labor, and we need to solve leadership. And nobody's going to do it for us. We can get people to help us facilitate it, but nobody is going to do it for you. You're not going to hand over money and something's going to be solved. You can replace a task with the management of the task, but you're never going to replace the task and solve it forever. So what I like to talk about in these things is, just like a personal relationship, it's not one way. A professional relationship, people treat their paint vendors horribly. If you treat them well, the relationship is better and you get better treatment. Same thing with marketers. There is a thing that paint companies owe a marketing company in that relationship. And how would you define what a paint company's responsibility is to a marketing company?
Oh, this is such a good question. So first of all, it's up to the marketing partner. I like to use the word partner, not agency. Partner is very much what it needs to be. It's up to your marketing partner to define that relationship. If they're not doing that effectively, that's on them, right? So a relationship in the world of marketing, again, think of it as if you own a business and you're telling somebody to go generate you new business, and if they don't spend at least a couple hours to chat with you about who you are, what your likes and interests are, what your favorite food is, what's your favorite sports team? What do you do in your free time? What's your family like? Do you own a dog? What's your dog's name? These questions may seem anecdotal to you running your business, but if I'm out there trying to introduce you to your audience and I have a picture of your dog and I don't know your dog's name, how is that going to look, right? It's going to come across as very cold. Marketing is about developing relationships. It's about me as a marketer connecting one business owner with their target audience. And in order to do that effectively, I need to define that relationship. Now, for those of you who are married who are listening in, you're going to understand what the word participation means, right? It's very important to understand that any relationship is a two-way street. It's give and take. Now, the giving is really important that also that marketing partner defines. Now, we have what we call 4 non-negotiables. And for those listening in, I'm going to talk through each of these. I have my screen shared here as well for those watching. But again, I like to make mention that we don't work for our clients. that wouldn't indicate that we are a service provider, which we're not. We work with our clients. We are a marketing partner. That's why we're on the phone with them several times a month on these phone calls, gauging things that are very subjective, like lead quality. I have some clients that are like, hey, send me anybody that wants a front door repainted. My sales process is good enough that I can sell them an entire exterior. Other clients are like, no, you know what? My sales process, I've never sold to anybody online. I don't even have somebody to answer the phone right now. I need to work on that kind of stuff. So only send me high quality leads. I'm willing to pay more for less volume. I understand how that works. Great. We've established that relationship. Now, the 4 things that we define, they're again called 4 non-negotiables. I like to consider these 4 legs of a stool. If we're missing a leg, the whole strategy becomes wobbly and unpredictable. And in the world of marketing, in particular in the painting industry, predictability is extremely easy. Consistency is extremely hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to keep this industry consistent with seasonality and market conditions, right? So the first thing that we require of all of our clients is to work on the sales handoff. So marketing is going to generate some business. And Nick, to your point, your cost per lead is not your primary KPI. Your cost per lead, I can send somebody $5 leads all day long. They are not going to be great, right? So the KPIs that we've already defined are really important. But when we look at the volume that we're generating, there needs to be a follow through on the other side. If somebody doesn't answer the phone, and when it rings, you are dropping the ball. So there's 3 things in the sales process that every single painting contractor needs to work on. And for those listening in, these are things that you guys should be doing regardless of who you're working with or who you're working for, or even if you don't have somebody running your marketing today. Start working on these things today, and you're going to set yourself up for a very successful future. So sales, speed to lead, answering the phone when it rings. There are certain ad channels that have artificial intelligence that records the phone calls. And if they hear a voicemail more than once, or even an IVR system, if you guys have the press 1 to reach customer service, these artificial intelligence systems typically aren't sophisticated enough to recognize that, oh, that's a system that will, reach a human and it's not just a voicemail. If they hear the same recording more than once, they are going to start to demote your ad quality score because you are not serving their audience who's reaching out to you, which means that you're going to spend more for less leads. So that is a metric that's outside of our control as a marketing agency, right? We're going to be delivering you volume. You need to answer the phone when it rings. There's a lot of solutions around that. Office managers are easy if you can afford them. Jill's Office, like a third-party answering service, international VAs, guys, get creative with this. The second is going to be the exact opposite concept of the first. Nick, how many times have you received a phone call or maybe even a form submission from an ad channel where your team gets it, they call a couple times, they're like, yeah, you know what? Nobody's answering the phone, dead lead. What does that follow-up process look like on your end? And what is that? How do you guys handle that type of a situation?
Yeah, there's about 8 touches over about 3 weeks that happen either by email or phone, just to make sure. If it's from one of our standard marketing channels, we put a couple things in there. There's an autofill form, but there is a drop-down menu for marketing, and then there's a description thing. And typically, if it's a marketing company trying to get a hold of us and sell us something, we're not going to do 8 follow-ups. But if it is a legitimate client from our area wanting something, we'll follow up to 8 times over the course of 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. So that follow-up process is critical for one number, and that is your set rate. So when we look at your set rate, again, that needs to be at around 70%. If it's too far below 50%, we look at 50% as the minimum cutoff per marketing channel. So if you take social media, for instance, right? That's a top of funnel marketing channel. It can take time to really dial in the quality over there. And when we look at, why people are actually on social media, it is not to look for a painting company, right? But we can target over there because it is still consistent throughout the year that people are going to be on social media, even on Christmas Day, right? So it is a very productive, economical ad channel, but it's going to require some following up. It's going to require some nurturing, some customer education. And I think a lot of guys get concerned about the follow-up. They're like, I don't want to bother these people, right?
Oh, no.
Well, yeah. So how would you respond to that, first of all, Nick?
Yeah, so many thoughts. What I always tell once in a while from my estimating team, they'll be like, man, I really don't want to ruin our reputation by just overburdening these people. And I'll say, Hey, I looked into Google data analytics to see if I could make a dashboard in there, and I'm getting 2 calls a day from Google a day, and it hasn't stopped for 3 weeks. Right now, I'm not pissed off. I'm just like, I just kind of want it to stop. I have seen clients weaponize against that. So I'll say that we're willing to give people free estimates. The least we can do is follow up to make sure. And if you contact them 6 to 8 times over 3 weeks, I feel that's reasonable because there's every other sales company on the planet that'll contact you twice a day until you literally beg them to stop.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys look at the follow-up process as a sales tactic, and technically they're not wrong. However, it doesn't need to be that way.
No.
A follow-up process, I like to say, is just a one-way conversation. You're going to have a one-way conversation with that prospect. I'll give you an example. We have a script that we built out for the follow-up process that we give all of our clients. The first one's obviously a little bit more sales-driven, where it's like, hey, so you're interested in an estimate. Is there a good day and time for us to stop out? You ping them maybe 2 hours later with a text or a phone call. And just following up to that first one, we have next Tuesday available. Is that a good day and time? Right? So you're proposing something for them, following up to the first one, right? It's just a continual follow-up to the previous one.
I really like that you're skipping ahead and you're collapsing 2 to 3 bits of communication into one, which is, how about this time and date instead of would you like an estimate? Because then that begs another thing and another thing. And I like it how it's just collapsible. That's a tactic we use in my company as well, too.
Yeah. And then you're going to, let's say, follow up the next day. And you're going to say, hey, by the way, I forgot to mention that we have a promotion running this month. Or, hey, I forgot to mention that we're going to be in your area tomorrow if you're interested in having us stop out, right? And then you can follow up the next day. Hey, by the way, if you're interested, I can send you over some examples of the service that you were interested in. I have some pictures I'll send over to you here shortly. Let me know if any questions come up in the meantime. Here's a link to schedule an estimate if you're still interested, right? And then the following day, it can be another follow-up to that follow-up. Hey, by the way, we just had an opening in our calendar if you're still interested. So you're trying to have this conversation with them that is not sales driven. It is providing them with opportunities and reasons for you to reach out. I think that's the important thing about a follow-up. You need to give yourself a reason to reach out to them. It shouldn't be, hey, just following up again. Hey, are you still interested? It is, hey, by the way, I forgot to mention, whatever that reason is, give yourself a scripted reason. Book that out over the course of a week or two. I like to say, based on our data, and this is like hard data, 14 days is the minimum follow-up process.
Yep.
I like every day. Now, there's some systems out there that can hammer the text and the email to automate that. Phone calls, though, I like to say just hit them once a day. And the best way that we have found to do this is by time blocking. So I like to use the analogy of a soccer mom at her lunch break at work. Let's just call it a Friday afternoon. It's Friday today. And she's sitting there on social media, scrolling through there, getting those hits of dopamine. And we're going to hit her with an ad, right? And she's interested in repainting her cabinets, but she hasn't had a chance to talk to her husband yet. So you're going to call her as soon as she submits that form, right? That's what you're trained to do as the speed to lead concept, right? But she might not be ready because she's around her coworkers at work, right? And then she forgets about it. But it's your obligation as a business owner to follow up with her. So what do? You wait until Monday because you're closed on the weekends. That's fine. Hammer her on Monday. But then it's in the morning on a Monday, and she's driving to work. She totally forgot about it. She hasn't talked to her husband yet, so she doesn't want to answer that. Then you hammer her again on Tuesday morning. She still forgot about it. The best way to do this is to time block different times of the day, different days of the week. So maybe Monday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and then just restart that cycle again. That way, eventually, you're going to meet that candidate, that prospect, when they're ready to talk. Does that make sense to you, Nick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So the follow-up process is critical, and it's ultimately what determines how many opportunities you're going to have at bat, right? You need enough opportunities to generate enough return to justify that investment. And the third thing that we require of all of our clients is they must be coachable. Anybody that comes to us that's been a part of a coaching program, the PCA, anything where they're willing to try something new to fail, they're willing to risk a sale, to implement a new tactic that they haven't used before, that is required. If you are in your ways, you've been in this business for years, you just need more leads, a marketing partner may not be the best fit for you, right? Because you need to participate. You need to actively adapt. This industry that we're in on the digital side changes every single day, every hour. The painting industry is no different than any other industry in the sense that the homeowners who are engaging a contractor for a service have likely heard that sales tactic before, right? How often do you train your team, Nick? What does your sales process and sales training look like?
Yeah, so there's obviously the initial apprenticeship where we do at least a week or two of, the SOP training and the ride-alongs. And then there's a weekly one-on-one interval and then ride-along interval where we touch base and we go over metrics and then obviously the human side of it as well.
Yeah, the human side's so important, right?
Yep.
So yeah, being coachable, being willing to try new things, and being willing to fail. Failure is how you learn. So those are the three sales requirements that we require of all of our clients. If you're doing those three things, the marketing to sales handoff is going to work extremely well. Now, the second thing that we require is media. And this is where I see a lot of challenges because people are afraid to get in front of the camera. Man, Nick, we call you One Take Nick, right? So you are very good about getting in front of the camera. You're very charismatic. You're able to just go off the cuff and have a good conversation with the camera, with a future prospect. A lot of guys struggle with this though, and it's extremely important. Nick, what has been your way to get over the ego or the thought that the person on the other side of that camera actually cares about you and what's on your shirt or how you sound?
Oh yeah, this is the unsatisfying answer is just repetitions, just like everything else. You want to get good at something and get comfortable with it. I mean, you're staring at somebody who's got a decade of hardcore content creation. Like this is, I just put in the repetitions. There's no other way to do it, right? There's no tricks. There's no anything else. You just got to try.
Yeah. So media is critical because, again, if we look at that concept of somebody talking on your behalf, even if you're running your own marketing, if you put out a before and after picture, great. But people don't buy services from a company, right? Like you don't go out there and have somebody come out to your house and buy their service because you like their company or their logo or whatever. You buy from other people. You buy from people that you know, like, and trust. And marketing is about emphasizing that trust and authenticity. Because I like to say in the world of marketing, where influencers and fake filters dominate the world, authenticity is becoming increasingly hard to find. There's a lot of fake, hell, even just look at Instagram profiles. That is the best part of somebody's life that they're posting out there. And in the world of marketing, it is about cutting through that fake filter and the fakeness that's out there and putting something authentic. One of the best image ads that we've ever run, there's actually two. The first is going to be a father and his son. The son took over his painting business. The father had passed away. They were standing in front of a Christmas tree. And we ran that ad in July because it was a pattern interrupt. And that story, it was actually a Polaroid picture sitting on a desk. And he took a picture using his camera of the Polaroid picture. And we ran that as an ad. And it was because we told an authentic story about how the father passed his painting company down to his son. It was his legacy. He loves to be a staple in his local community. The second best ads that we see on the image side are going to be dog pictures. People love animals. Anybody that has a cute puppy, go steal your neighbor's dog for a picture if you need to. Post a picture about a dog and just say how much you love animals. Tell a quick story about that. Another great one is taking a picture in front of your favorite local restaurant with the sign in the background, preferably not like a chain restaurant, but something that's local to your community, right? And telling a story about that restaurant. Because what you're doing is you're spotlighting another business and you're not asking them for anything in return. And somebody's going to comment on there saying, hey, I love their sea bass dish, or, hey, that steak there is fantastic. I love it. And that gets engagement, which is a leading indicator for everything downstream, which typically turns into more business. Now, on the video side, to your point, Nick, it's about just putting in the reps. I like to say, if you look back on the very first video you created a year from now and you don't cringe, you probably waited too long. You just need to get started, right? All right. So top two things there, sales and media. The third thing is going to be reviews. Nick, do you know how many reviews you have on your Google business profile today?
I think we're over 308 right now.
Yeah. So here's the important thing about reviews is everybody looks at that big number. They're like, yeah, 308 reviews. We're doing good. Well, Google updated their algorithm recently. I think it was last year, actually, that they are leveling the playing field. They've identified that there are some guys out there that have hundreds and hundreds of reviews. And if you're a new business, playing catch up to that's going to take you a year or more, right? So what they've done is they're not only focusing on the total number of reviews, that's still a weighted factor. They're also focusing on the frequency, and they're in 90-day intervals. So every 90 days, Google looks back at the local competition. It's all relative, right? And it says, let's just look at who's acquired the most reviews over the last 90 days. That's who's actively participating in their algorithm the most, and they're going to reward them. So we've actually had clients with 50 reviews outranking those with over 300 before, because they've simply acquired more of those reviews in the last 90 days than their competition has. That's why whenever you Google some competition, they may only have a few reviews compared to what you have, but they're outranking you. The second thing here is going to be the total star count, or the actual rating. There are tiers, there's thresholds. 4.7 is the minimum threshold that you want to be at. If you're below 4.7 stars, you are in a different category that you do not want to be in. So keep in mind that that reputation is extremely important. And that business profile on Google is the only place we care about your reputation. We don't care about Yelp. We don't care about Nextdoor, any of these other sites that have a reputation out there, because they all acquire their business and their volume from Google. Google makes up about 1/3 of traffic on that business profile. Extremely important.
Question for you for perspective, because it feels like our industry hyperfixates on reviews and the high standard of them, but search any hotel on the planet and they're in the 3 stars.
Yeah.
Yet they rank very high. They seem to do well. They make a ton of money. Like, why is it okay for the hotel industry to have an average of 2.9 stars? Hilton, Marriott, all the ones we know, but yet in our industry, we must be 4.9, right?
Yeah. I like to say it's because they're chains. I mean, it's no different than if you were to Google a local restaurant, you see a chain, you don't care that Applebee's has a 2-star review. You know, you're going to go there and you're going to get the same consistent, sizzler plates every time, right? So people are in it for the chains for different reasons. If you're looking at a locally owned business or a service you're looking to target, especially whenever it comes to homeowners, people physically coming inside of your house, the reviews, your reputation matters more than if you go somewhere else to acquire that service. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I suppose if you're going to go to a McDonald's, listen, you may not be expecting 5 stars, but it's probably going to be relatively clean. It's going to be relatively safe and relatively predictable, because the name brand makes up for the lack of stars, perhaps.
Yeah, correct. And like I said, just the aspect of somebody physically coming into your home holds a lot more weight than you traveling somewhere else. So the reputation is increasingly becoming an important factor in the world of marketing, because not only does that dictate where you show up organically, which again, 1/3 of Google search traffic is now going to your business profile, not the website, not your ads, to that business profile where you do not pay for those leads directly. That is what we call an exponential lead source. So the more volume, the more reviews you get on there, the more business you can expect on the other side of that. That profile also ties into local services ads, which is a fantastic ad channel. So that reputation's becoming an increasingly important weighted factor because AI. Google has identified that their biggest competition right now is ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, right? They have their back against the wall. They have not had competition since they launched back in the early 2000s. So this is all new to them. They're out of their wits here. It's an interesting dynamic that's really going to come to a head over the next year or two. So what they've identified is they still have the market cornered in terms of the local rankings and the local businesses, because people don't go on ChatGPT yet to search for best local painting company, because they're still pulling that data directly from Google. They don't have a source to acquire that type of data yet. So in the meantime, we really need to put some weight on that, because Google is focusing more and more on that as their leverage point. It's their point that they are going to leverage as they continually try to identify where they fit in the market on the AI side. Nick, what are your thoughts around AI while we pause there maybe, and how that's impacting maybe marketing, or just how you guys are using that in the business today?
Yeah, it's replacing a lot of menial database tasks, but also, honestly, I'm seeing myself use it more of a search function. And I heard some anecdotes from some podcasts recently that, Google has 90% of the search market.
Yep.
It is a monopoly. They have a moat around them. It's monopolistic. All of a sudden, everybody our age and younger starts messing with ChatGPT and the other AI engines. And I find myself every week opening up ChatGPT versus Google anymore. And because now, to me, Google almost hurt themselves by having their AI summary at the top of their search because it's not near as good as ChatGPT. So now what we're doing is we're getting this standard thing where, the people pay for this sort of ranking in there. And then there's a bastardized summary. I can go to ChatGPT and get a beautifully thoughtful answer instead. And that's what we want. I think everybody younger than us wants a curated version of this versus painter near me. And then there's 7,200 pages of painters and you need to suss through raw data. So I think it's going to change. I hope it does because I don't like being beholden to any one company for any of this stuff.
Yeah. Totally. It's going to be really interesting. I'm projecting based on a number of different assumptions out there that over the next year or two, so 12 to 24 months, we're going to see some major shifts in the way that marketing online is done. So it'll be really interesting to keep our eye on that and make pivots accordingly. But yeah, for those of you not leveraging AI today, when we talk about like being coachable, I don't know if you guys recognize this. You can talk to ChatGPT in the app. You can set it up in your car and use it as a sales trainer. Act like a homeowner. I'm going to go out there and pitch you a new estimate. Push rejections my way. I'm going to work on rejection handling, right? And it's a great way to prep yourself or prime yourself for that next estimate, right? So just as an example of how powerful AI is, you just need to be creative enough to know how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So the fourth and final point that we always require from our clients is feedback. And this is where I see a lot of breakdown, and not just in the world of marketing, but in this industry, is the type of feedback that is actually required to generate results. So the first one's pretty simple, is like, hey, if you book a call with our team, we need you to show up on time. But detailed feedback, data, we make decisions based on data, right? As you should. And when we look at data, it is not about, hey, this lead is not qualified. That's not helpful. It is, this lead is not qualified because it's out of area, it's a job seeker, it's a lead that didn't meet our project minimum, right? There are different mechanisms and processes that a good marketing agency should have in place to know how to mitigate those type of issues that come up. Because here's what happens. When you launch, let's say, a new marketing or ad campaign, typically you need to train the algorithm. And it's no different than training a dog. So the first couple of weeks, that dog's going to pee on your floor. It's going to chew up a pillow, right? You need to wait for it to make mistakes to correct it, because if you proactively correct those things without actually letting the mistakes happen, you may overcorrect, right? And then at that point, you're going to train a dog to do something you don't want it to do. It's no different than in the world of marketing. We need to let it fail in those first 30 to 90 days to know exactly what we need to do, what levers and buttons we need to push and pull to get that dialed into a point where your volume's right, your cost is right, and more importantly, the quality is right. The quality being the subjective point. Those are our three lead levers that we need to dial in. Over time, you get more and more accurate, and then ultimately that's going to produce a much better result. I like to say marketing is like the stock market. The longer you invest, the better results you can expect. So those are the four things that we require to see a successful partnership in that painting contractor to marketing partnership.
Oh, love that, man. There's two more things on my hit list that I wanted to talk to you about. I want to talk about when marketing goes wrong, and I want to talk about sales. And so quick hitters. A painter partners up with an ad agency. It's multiple months, many, many thousands of dollars. The stuff isn't there. The painter's getting a little bit nervous. The leads aren't there. And we're operating on a lot of faith. That painter comes to you and says, dude, this is BS, man. Like, I'm paying you a ton of money. I'm not getting leads. Why? And what is your response?
Yeah, this is a great question. So the first thing is, the marketing agency should be proactive enough to reach out to the painting contractor and say, hey, just want to let you know, your results are not dialed into our KPIs. We are doing X, Y, and Z to make up for that. Keeping them proactively informed. We have a saying in our company here, which is, if somebody's asking for an update, we are failing. If they're just wondering where we're at with this, or can you give me a quick update on, we're failing. That question should never come up, right? So like, that's the first most important thing. That way you're always informed. The second thing is, there is certain circumstances where it's not economical to invest in marketing. The primary one being audience size. So if we're looking at a market size of about 250K or below, you are going to have trouble generating the volume you need by investing online. So there's just simply not enough fish to fish from. And more importantly, there's something called market saturation. So any market, you reach what's called market saturation pretty quick over the course of, let's say, a week or two in a smaller market, maybe a month or two in a larger market, where it's a bell curve. Your marketing performs well for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months, it peaks, everybody's seen it, it gets tired, and then it stops performing as well. It's why you need that constant incoming flow of media, because they need to be refreshed, right? So it's up to the marketer to look at everything holistically and say, okay, this client, this account is participating. They're supplying us with the media. We have a bunch of reviews. They're working on their sales process. Their pickup rate looks good. Their follow-up process looks good. What's failing? Then we look at the market. Okay, is it an audience size? Is it level of competition is going to be the other big one? There are some markets that Angie, Home Advisor, a lot of these shared lead sites, they bid up on Google to the point where it's almost uneconomical to advertise on there, because you are never going to be able to justify spending $500 on a lead, right? It's just not, but they are. It's just not going to work for you. There's also some markets where you have 100 painting companies in a very small market, and they are all investing. And the worst is when you have a market of undereducated contractors investing money into a market where they're not actually tracking anything and they're overspending. They don't even know it, which leads to you investing in something that will never make sense economically. So those market conditions, it's very important that the marketer, the marketing partner, evaluates that to understand, is this actually going to work? And if it doesn't, it's their obligation to terminate that relationship. It's the same way that we would terminate relationships if we do not get these 4 non-negotiables. Mm-hmm. I will always look at and try to work with an account the best that we can. But if we do not get these 4 non-negotiables with 90 to 95% certainty, that relationship, that the strategy, our processes will fail. It's inevitable, because again, it's like if you're in a marriage and you don't listen to your wife at the dinner table when she's talking about her day, it's going to start to deteriorate, right? That's just not how a partnership works. So we always look at things holistically to determine from a scientific standpoint where the breakdown is occurring. Because if you know marketing well enough to understand the data and what works and what doesn't work and why things are not predictable in that particular case, it should be very clear as to where the breakdown is. Very rarely will we ever have an account where we just don't know what's going on. I can maybe count 2 times in the last 2 years that's ever come up. And in those cases, we typically do a post-mortem, a post-audit of that account, where we really dive into the numbers, dive into the data to try to find some explanation. It's never going to be 100% accurate, but there's always going to be some indication of like, oh, okay, this is something that we can evaluate in the future, or this is something that we can do differently to help prevent this from happening, right? You always try to get some data out of that failure. But it is up to the marketer to terminate or end relationships before that client has a concern. Now, there are going to be cases where that account, that client, that contractor is concerned. They come to us and we say, hey, you know what? Let's do this over the next 30 days and let's reevaluate it then. I just talked to a client back at the PCA. He was concerned about a few things. Told him exactly what our team was doing in that time frame. Told him we're going to have a much different conversation 30 days from now. Talked to him this week. It's a much different conversation because the seasonality had not kicked in at that point. So those are the types of conversations that you need to be having. That does require trust and participation. But again, if your marketing partner is leading you on month over month, hey, we're doing this or doing that differently, and nothing's working, you definitely need to pull the trigger.
Okay, last topic here. I have an initial question about sales. I will require a 1-word answer and then 2 follow-ups after that. So number 1, do sales as we understand them, do they work?
Define. You're talking about promotions.
10% off.
Yeah. Okay. The short answer is yes.
Yep. Okay. Can you prove it with data?
Yes. We have data to back that up.
What does the data look like to justify sales or 10% discounts and things like that?
Yeah. So the data suggests that we leverage sales when buyer intent is lowest. So for instance, when we're looking at the seasonality of this industry, if we are around the holidays or end of quarters when things get expensive, or the wintertime when people are not thinking about painting their house, right? We need to incentivize. We need to manufacture some buyer intent. That's the only way to do that. Now, the data is based around the accounts that are offering a promotion, a discount, an incentive, and those that are not, right? So the data suggests that the volume is higher on the accounts, the returns higher as a result on the accounts that have some sort of incentive, some sort of reason for that person to actually engage them when they may not be thinking about doing that at all. Does that make sense, Nick?
It does, and that brings up a good point internally because we're a bunch of thoughtful people. And if I'm being intellectually honest, I'm not sophisticated enough to prove that that sale is what sold it. Would they have bought it anyway? Or did you just speed up the sale? I'm just going to lay all my cards on the table with you especially and say, this is our internal discussion. I
Yeah.
can't prove that that person wouldn't have bought anyway, or we just sped it up 2 weeks and now we have less revenue. Is there some way as a marketer that you can actually prove that it caused a sale when it did not, or you did not just speed something up?
Yeah, it's not as big of a metric as you might presume. I don't have the exact number. It's somewhere between 20 and 30%, like around 25%, right?
Yeah.
Of increase in volume. So, for instance, if I were to take markets from around the United States, and this is going to have the heaviest impact on the markets up north where it's colder. We run an ad that is the generic evergreen ad. Hey, book an estimate today. We got 5 spots left. Do you want to create some urgency around that? Whatever, right? And then we have another ad that is, hey, for the first 5 people to click on this ad, you get a free color consultation. We're incentivizing something, right? The ad that has the incentive on that is always going to outperform the ad that does not. Now, where that math is not true, and this is maybe where a lot of the gray area comes into play, is during the spring and summer peak season. People are interested. You don't need to incentivize them, right? It's up to you to generate some urgency. That's I always highly recommend having some sort of an urgency-based mechanism in your ad copy. So again, limited time, book now and say, or book now. Our schedules filling up quick, like whatever that can be. But the bottom line is, during the peak season, promotions, offers are not required. It is only when buyer intent is lowest and we need to manufacture some of that urgency to actually reach out to you for some reason.
Mm-hmm. A common refrain that I hear in the industry is this, and I'd love an expert's sort of reaction to it, is the average paint business runs on a 5 to 15% true net profit, right? If you're lucky, a good paint company, a large professional one, will have a 10% net profit. And when you ask a painting contractor to discount 10%, you're essentially making them a nonprofit. They're giving away all of their potential reward for all the risks that they're doing. The best thing that they can do at that point is pay your painters, pay your paint manufacturers, and pay your overhead. Essentially, removing one of the incentives for us to get those extra jobs. Now, what makes this hard for me and other people is I might be okay with this if all of the jobs who said yes to the sale would never have said yes anyway. But if you just took existing clients and just gave them all a 10%, now you're in a worse position than you were. Added to that, a common refrain I hear is, in your spreadsheet, I did not see the cost of those sales in there. So really, if you look at this from the paint contractor's point of view, there is a major hidden cost to marketing where if we're at 7, 8, 9, 10% of marketing costs with a marketing company and we give a 10% from our P&L and if we had to justify it to our shareholders, you're at a 17%. You're at a 20% cost of marketing at that point. That is a utilitarian, commonly heard refrain from a contractor on the ground, and we might be okay with it if that spurred on people who had never done it. But if we can't prove that we didn't just give our existing clients that becomes it can become emotional for paint contractors. I've heard paint contractors get very emotional about this stuff because it's a lot of time and treasure devoted to it. So expert marketer reaction to boots on the ground reaction to that.
Great question. So when we look at discounts, I like to reserve that for a time and a place. Discounts, to your point, we're already working on tight margins.
Yeah.
There's a few ways to handle that. The first way is increase your rates to offset.
So, okay, that's something I didn't mention. Assume we're not crooks and don't increase our price 10% and then lower it, which is,
Right.
I want to break my desk in half when I hear contractors say that, because the PCA and you and me and everybody else operating in this industry are trying to dispel the myth of this horribly crooked
Yeah.
industry known as home contracting. So, number one, if you want to get some people angry, increase your price 10%, then give a 10% discount.
Right. Yeah. So that's again, we do not want to do that. That is the option of offsetting that, right? The better way to do this, and this is the promotions in terms of where we want to get creative, is by identifying what other opportunities there are to leverage. So promotions, there's monetary and percentage off, right? You can get creative with those. Again, a time and a place. In reality, most of our clients, their audience is not motivated by money, right? It's not about that. It's going to be about some other things. So for instance, if you could do, if you work with any sort of a color consultation, I'm sorry, color consultant, interior designer, it is a great relationship to build where you can say, hey, free color consultation for the first 5 people to click on this ad, right? We're creating urgency around an offer. Warranties is another good one. Nick, do you offer any sort of a warranty for interior, exterior?
Sticking point. Outwardly, no. But if you call us and something fails, we'll take care of you. Our systems prevent us from having the need for a warranty. So,
yeah. So it's a good thing to emphasize. And the reason I say that is if you offer a warranty and so does your competition, but your competition tells the customer that you do, or that they do, and then you don't, that's obviously something that they can leverage, right? So just by not saying something, that's an opportunity to sell something. There's also some other things here that I like to get creative with. Nick, do you offer any sort of good, better, best price model or program pricing based on the services or the types of paint you apply?
no, and this is something you can imagine I have some pretty deep thoughts on, which is I cannot convey the different value propositions between a good, better, best. I have not been able to. So this is me self-admitting that I know people who do. I have never been able to commonly have a client distinguish between 3 price options.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It does take creativity. This is where ChatGPT can play a big role. But there's a reason that anytime you buy an iPhone, there's multiple options. Or you go to McDonald's, they have a small, medium, large, extra large, right? Or the super size. There's different options because people like options. And the good, better, best model, there's a Harvard study backing all of this data, proves that if you provide your customers with options, particularly 3, so there's going to be a low tier option that they don't typically want, might be good for those that are price conscious. The high ticket item, which is generally going to be too much for somebody. And the one in the middle is just right? That's the one that we want to sell. Now, you use something called gate attributes. A gate attribute is something that the customer cannot live without. And you use the gate attributes somewhere in that model. What you're doing is you're explaining to them, hey, this one includes maybe 1 coat or 2 coats here. This one is this plus this type of paint. This one includes this type of a warranty. And this one also includes annual touch-ups, right? Getting creative with this allows you to structure what you're offering instead of it just being a black and white cold, this is the number, this is the estimate. It is, here's some options that you can work with based on your needs. Maybe I'm just planning on selling the house. I don't care about a warranty. Okay, well, we can simply knock some pricing off as a result of that. And that can be our, gold option, maybe even platinum option. So offering the good, better, best pricing model not only should increase your close rate, but it's also something we can leverage in the promotional structure. We can say, hey, sign up today and we'll give you the platinum pricing for the gold option, right? So or the platinum option for the gold pricing. So I highly recommend looking at your business and identifying what are the things you can create urgency around. Time is one of those. Services is another. Obviously, money, we want to save that for last, though. And identify how you can leverage that. What is the one thing in your business that is of limited supply? And tie that to an urgent offer.
Last bit of feedback. I appreciate the conversation. Last bit of feedback, though, is one through line through all of our marketing is honesty. And it is a knee-jerk template ad now that we see all painting companies have is, hey, South Metro homeowners, I have 5 spots left for this. You don't have 5 spots left for this. You have unlimited spots left for this. And so I agree with creating urgency, but I have a moral quandary with a lot of things that you raise your price 10%, then you lower it. You say you only have so many spots left. I have unlimited spots. I have the capacity to do 66 estimates a week. I could service 66 homeowners a week. So I really struggle with that. And for people who might struggle with that, how do we have genuine, honest advertising, but also create urgency?
Oh, this is such a good question. All right. So I used to struggle with this myself, right? If you look at any holiday, let's take 4th of July, for instance, you're going to tune in on TV and you're going to see 100 ads around mattress stores and car dealerships that have the 4th of July promo, stop in today and save X, Y, and Z, right? Do you think if you stopped into that car dealership a week after the 4th of July that they wouldn't offer you that same exact discount? No, you're gonna be able to go in there and say, I saw this ad last week. I know you guys said it's until Saturday and it's Monday. Can I still take advantage of that? They're going to absolutely say yes, right? They do that because it works. Now, my recommendation is if you are concerned about the moral quandary behind it, do what I just said. Offer it anyways, right? You don't have to say the first 5 spots and that's it. That's the cutoff. But you do need to create some urgency, because if you don't, you are not going to be incentivizing that person to reach out to you. And when we look at marketing, it is about making that connection, that initial introduction. That's all it is. And yes, if we need to twist the truth slightly to make that initial introduction, to break the hesitation of that prospect, break that down to the point where they're actually going to reach out to you, which allows them to make a connection with you, which allows you to add more value to their life, I would argue that it's worth it.
Quite a bit of gray area there for me. And I will fully admit that we have a fairly sophisticated system of trying to do database marketing, but there are areas of marketing that are just gray. And then you overlay the core values of the company and what you want to do. And I believe a large portion of marketing is honestly differentiation. And if the cut and paste ad nowadays is a waving hand and, hey, South Metro, 10% off or free stuff, honestly, you might be differentiating yourself by just being straight up and down, doing very nice edited images of a house that looks like the area you're in and offering a straight value prop. This is a unformed idea of mine, but it is something now that, as with the advent of a lot of marketing agencies and an advent of more marketing sophistication leads to a lot of standardization of this stuff, and I start worrying about the authenticity and the genuineness and your actual core values coming through with this. And I think I had the benefit of starting this business 17 years ago, where we always laugh about this, the 2 major forms of marketing were Yellow Pages and a newspaper, right? And you could differentiate yourself highly just by being there and doing some interesting things. And I wonder about the homogenization of marketing in our industry. And I think because nobody does it, I think it's getting a good result, but there will be a time, just like everything else, it gets to be a known quantity. It gets down to the lowest rungs of the unsophisticated. They start doing it too, and it becomes a market saturation thing. And I do think in the end, differentiation will be good too. Now, what that is, who knows? I think by us being genuine and us portraying who we are and what we offer in a genuine way is probably the best overall if you want to be in this business for 50 years. But we're on the frontier of marketing in the service industries, like HVAC companies, electricians, plumbers. They're far more sophisticated than the painting world. This is all brand new, and it's fun to see. It's fun to start seeing real marketing science and methods being made and it's fun to see the progression through all of it, Austin.
Totally agree. And I cannot emphasize enough, marketing needs to lead with authenticity. That's why, again, if your agency, your partner is not spending the time to get to know you, if the first question they ask is for your credit card, consider finding somebody else that's willing to ask you the right questions. It's extremely important for that successful relationship to work out well.
Dude, I appreciate the honest conversation today. This is great.
This is awesome, Nick. I appreciate you being on here and asking the hard-hitting questions myself, man.
Oh, listen. Oh, if you thought those were the hard-hitting ones, we're gonna have to do a number 2. I got the list that'll give you pause, my friend. So
let's go, man. Round 2, anytime. Nick, thanks for your time today, brother. As always.
Dude, anytime. Appreciate you.
Talk soon. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us on that episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat as much as I did. Now, listen, if you guys are hungry for more conversations like this, go swing by our website. It's basecoatmarketing.com/podcast. And finally, we are very open to feedback. So if we haven't covered a topic or there's someone you want us to chat with, please let us know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next conversation for painters.